Hey, hello to my Pega partners and friends from all over the world. Welcome to the Pega Partner Hour, a monthly webinar aimed at providing Pega partners with all of the support that they need in the sales, technical, and industry domains. Some quick housekeeping. As always, we'll be recording this session. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to drop from the call, and you're welcome to watch the recording at a later time. But before we get started, I wanted to tell you we're getting some really good feedback on this webinar series. But I'd really be remiss if I didn't point out that a lot of things have to go right for this to work. We have product owners and speakers who are carving out a lot of time from their schedules for this. And we have people in the background making this webinar run smoothly and professionally. Today, that's John Lynch, who is making it all work. So a quick thanks to John. And most importantly, if it wasn't for you, our great Pega partners that take the time to register and log in, I'd be talking to an empty computer screen. So thank you for letting us spend this hour with you. Okay, if you're all ready, let's get this edition of the Pega Partner Hour started. I'm your host, Randy Marson, and today's edition is going to be the best one yet. James Carstairs is joining the hour to talk about one of Pega's latest releases, Gen AI Knowledge Buddy, and James is going to take questions in real time. So please feel free to add them in the Q&A space. But before we get to James, we are 30 days until we all head out to Las Vegas, so I hope you're starting to pack your bags. All right, I know this particular slide is hard to see, so please take some notes or screenshot because this is really important for you to know about Pega World, specifically for you, the Pega partners. Number one, the Partner Town Hall will start promptly at 2 p.m. on Sunday and run until 4 p.m., and that's in room 316. Number two, the Partner Reception will start immediately after that at 5 p.m. in room 319. So I'm jumping up on slides. I apologize on that. So I know you're all asking, Randy, how do I get into these events? Well, I can tell you this, showing up and dropping my name isn't going to get you in. So if you want to go to these events, you have to pre-register. And this is where you're going to do it. www.pega.com/events/Pega World partner town hall. Now it's up here on this slide. So please, again, take a screenshot or grab a quick pen. Again, it's www.pega.com/events/Pega World partner town hall. I look forward to seeing you there. And what promises to be one of the best breakouts that you do not want to miss. Also on Sunday after the partner reception at 5 p.m. in room 319, I'm honored to extend an invitation to all of you to developing the next gen of women leaders in panel and reception. Again, for my money, this panel promises to be one of the best of the week. So I don't want to miss it. I hope you don't miss it either. All right, let's be honest, no one logged in to hear me talk today. So please let me introduce you to the one, the only, James Carstairs.
Thank you, Randy, for that wonderful introduction. Let me share my screen here. And I've got some slides and things to go through today. But here's the thing, and if you've ever come to any of my presentations before, I'm somebody who loves to be hands-on, right? So I love questions coming in real time. I love to get feedback. If you guys want me to go in a different direction to what I'm presenting, trust me, I'm happy just to go in any particular direction you like. So Randy, I'll let you govern the questions, and if anything pops up that you want to redirect me, sing out, ask it, and then I can basically head in that direction. So we always start whenever I'm presenting, or we're always talking about product, we always say, hey, this is just our vision, this is our strategy, future direction. What we're showing you today is not necessarily a commitment or a legal obligation, but yada yada yada, all terms and conditions. So let's have a look. What have I got for you guys today? Knowledge Buddy. Okay. So myself, James Carstairs, I'm actually the product manager for two areas, knowledge management and also our newly created product, the Knowledge Buddy, which everybody is super excited about. So we always sit back and we think, well, what's the issue we're trying to solve with a product? In this particular case, right, we have this major dilemma. every customer's in the same situation. You've got documents all over the place, right? It's hard to find things, right? And we've had search engines, we've had various different flavors of it, whether it's an advanced search, a basic search, an elastic search, an NLP search. There's all these different types of searches, right? And they'll always return some documents to you, but you still have to dig through those documents in order to find the answers. So what if you could just ask your documents? You know, that's the paradigm we've basically set. And with Knowledge Buddy, right, that's exactly what you can do. So, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are, you know, whether you're talking to employees, whether you're talking to customers, right, whether they're end users, whether they're agents, it doesn't matter, right? It's all about trying to put the knowledge into a system, right, and be able to simply ask a question and literally get the answer back from it. Now, we're not doing anything from a question and answer perspective that is completely different to what you'd be seeing in the marketplace from other vendors. But what you will see is that our product itself is an enterprise grade product, right? And by that, you know, we're built on top of Pega, right? So by building on top of Pega, you get all of the bells and whistles that the Pega platform actually gives you. We've got really tight content control, right? We've got auditability. Everything that you do through Buddy is tracked, right? We've got tight security, right? Because you guys have already got a Pega product and your product already has role-based security in it. You guys know how to do security in Buddy, right? You ingest your content, you add some roles to it, and Buddy will respect those roles, right? So, you know, it's all about building a complete end-to-end solution. So again, you ask a question, you get an answer. Of course, we want a feedback mechanism. We want to allow the users to be able to say, yes, that was a good answer, or no, it's not. Right? So we have content governance as well. And of course, the best thing about our Buddy, seamless integration, right? We have a knowledge gadget, right, that you will be able to download from Marketplace and literally just add that onto your Constellation application and just, you know, a couple of configurations to pick your Buddy and you can start asking questions. Right. So seamless integration, that's one of our key features here. So Randy, I'm hopefully that I'm not going to sit here just having death by PowerPoint. So hopefully some questions do start coming in a little bit. So keep me posted if they do. But I'm going to keep motoring until I get a question. So, and by the way,
James, one popped into me from one of the someone directly texted it to me. I don't know why they didn't Q&A it, but the question they asked, and I hope I'm not going to jump ahead of you on this. If we are, let me know. The question is how are the buddies being secured?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I will cover that a little bit later as well, and I'll actually show that to you. But the Buddy is secured in two ways, right? We have access to the Buddy portal itself, which has security around who can get into the Buddy portal and who can actually develop a Buddy or build a Buddy. And then we have access at the end user layer from who can actually ask a question to the Buddy. Okay? And then of course, every question that comes in is built on top of our repository, which is secured by content, which has roles associated to it. So you can only get back, right, the answers to the content that you have access to. So we'll have a little bit more of a look in that a bit
That's
later.
great. That's why I love Pega and I love what you guys do, because I knew there was going to be a good answer.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. So let's have, I mean, when we talk about Knowledge Buddy, right, and we talk about seamless integration, right, you can make as many buddies as you need, right, and a buddy can do whatever you need it to do, right, and then you can place your buddy into any channel that you actually like, okay, and because Buddy's built on top of a vector database, right, you can ingest content using our REST APIs directly into the vector database, right, or you can use our Pega knowledge management application and simply publish articles, and that will automatically ingest that content, right, directly into the vector database, and then you can immediately start asking questions to it. The integration side of things is super cool. There's a lot of good stuff for partners as well, and so I'll talk about that a bit later with our prompt engineering side of things, because your partners will be going, hey, if everything's already done for us, what do we do? Well, you guys are going to become the master of prompt engineering, right, which I'm sure you guys are already becoming experts in today. So just another quick slide here on the benefits of the buddy. If you guys are talking to customers and you're looking to try to sell the buddy, you know, it's actually built for the Pega ecosystem. It's built for enterprise. It literally will deliver the answers. It'll drive the action to improve the answers if you're not happy with it. And of course, you know, it's the whole end-to-end solution where you can literally just simply drop this into a UI and literally start running with it. So I won't talk through all the points. I've covered a lot of them already, but let's you're probably already asking yourselves already, well, what does Buddy even look like? Okay. So Buddy is literally just this little piece here. Right? It's a very simple little user interface. You know, you can ask a question, right, and you get an answer. Okay. Now, this is a sample here of it just being put into a back office portal in you know, regular UI kit. You know, we've also embedded this into our chat application. So if you've already got Pega chat and you're on 24.1, you know, you'll be able to integrate Buddy in and just start asking questions. And of course, you know, what we've also done within the chat application is we're detecting things. We're using the generative AI to detect things like about different case flows and things that you can immediately just literally press a button and action. So of course, you know, once you are opening up an article and things and you're answering a question from Buddy, we always have this feedback, you know, so you can provide feedback. And of course, as I said, you can actually launch different cases as well. So back in customer service, of course, you know, we want to try to put Buddy in as many places as possible. And again, if you think about Buddy, Buddy's just a question and an answer. So of course, where do we want to put this? We want to put this straight into our existing knowledge management component. Right? So it doesn't matter whether you're using Constellation or whether you're using the old UI kit customer service, Infinity, you can literally just turn on the Buddy and start asking questions. Right? The configuration for this is a little bit more specific, right? Because we've had to be a little bit smarter in the background, because in this particular case, with our knowledge management component, right, if you happen to click on an article, right, and we can have references and things coming back, but if you want to click on an article, we want to open that article up within our knowledge management gadget, right? So we've got a few little secret smarts behind the scenes there, which is fully exposed as well. So it's not quite a secret, but we actually have the Knowledge Buddy return their answers in a JSON format, and then we interpret that JSON and we take actions on it. So you can do things like that with your Buddy. You don't just have to get a plain text back. You can literally tell Buddy, hey, I want you to respond in a JSON format. Maybe you want a rich HTML format. Maybe, like, for example, we also have Buddy integrated internally into our WebEx applications here at Pega. And so we have Buddy return the answer in Markdown format, right? So it's quite compatible with WebEx. So the world is really open in terms of how you want to have your buddies come back. But from a user interface perspective, we actually have our own Buddy portal as well. And you can see here, I'll bring up the portal and show you this, but this is where all the magic happens behind the scenes, right? And in Buddy itself, you get to write your prompts, right? And you know, people say to me, well, what is a knowledge buddy, and what, you know, why do we need your knowledge buddy? And the answer is that we're basically using generative AI in exactly the same way that you would use generative AI yourself. Okay, so we literally, anybody here, I'm sure basically everybody on this call has made a REST API call to OpenAI, and you've sent through your question, and you've sent a system prompt, and you've sent a user prompt, right? We're doing exactly the same thing. But what we're doing here is we're bundling everything up into our Knowledge Buddy in a set of instructions, right? And then a set of our answers. And then we're basically giving Buddy, you know, everything it needs to answer the question. And then we're getting generative AI to answer the question. But what we do within our portal, as you can see here, is we wrap everything nicely into a case, okay? And so that when you ask a question, you can drill into that case and you've got full auditability, right, of every single question that was asked, right? We can see and we show you exactly what RAG data that we actually used as part of that question. And you get to obviously see the question and the answer, and if there was feedback, you know, we basically will expose that to you as well. So what we're building is, it's like what you do with generative AI yourselves, right? When you're actually just asking ChatGPT, except it's like on Pega steroids, Okay, so it's wrapped in this really cool application, which we obviously call the Knowledge Buddy. So we are going to jump in.
Yeah, hey, James, we got a question or two that have come in. I thought I'd
Okay.
take a
Yep.
spot here
Yep,
while
go
we're
for
in
it.
between slides. All right, the question comes in. As I understand, today the optimize function is not automated from a machine learning perspective, an ML perspective. Any responses not answered are set up to be reviewed by an admin. As the buddy matures, is it possible to automate expanding the prompts?
When you say expand the prompts, what you'll see is you guys are fully in charge of the prompts. Okay, so you can write the prompt to be a brief prompt. You can write the prompt to be extremely detailed. Right? It's completely up to you how you write those prompts, and we just provide the gateway for you to do that. I'm not sure if I've answered that question right. Give a thumbs up if that was the right answer, and I'll actually show you the UI in a little bit as well. And that will probably make that clearer for you, because you can have many buddies doing many different things, right? And it's up to how you write the prompts. And it's, as I said, it's very similar to what you're doing with generative AI today. If you're writing a prompt to generative AI and you're asking the question, you can still do the same thing through Buddy. Buddy just gives you that wrapper around it, right? But not only that, is if you think while we're wrapping around the whole RAG process and asking the question and building the prompt, and we're sending that through to generative AI. Well, today we're sending that through to OpenAI, right? Tomorrow we're going to send that through to Facebook's Llama model, right? Next day we're going to send this to Gemini, right? Next day after that, we can send it to whichever language model we want. We can send it through the cloud, or we can keep it within the Pega infrastructure. But there's a lot of different options that we're going to expand into our Knowledge Buddy that you guys won't have to worry about. You just write the prompts, right? And you pick the model that you want to use, which, as I said, initially in 24.1, it is OpenAI. However, we'll quickly expand that and release other language models for you to use as well.
James, another question. Has anybody linked it to SharePoint yet?
So actually a really good question. So we've had a number of different implementations internally where we've been messing around. I say use that term loosely, messing around with SharePoint. SharePoint has APIs that allows you to get the data out of it, right? So you can make an API call to get the data out of SharePoint, and you can push that data into our vector store. And then once it's indexed, you can ask a question and we can use that data, same as any other data. Another alternative that has been experimented internally as well is actually using the SharePoint vector store that it has and asking a question to the SharePoint store, getting their RAG data out of SharePoint and passing that in to Knowledge Buddy as what we call an additional text input, right? So you're basically already pre-fetching your own data and pushing that into the Knowledge Buddy so we can answer a question using that data. So that's the second method. And then, of course, because that method's pretty cool, the third one that we're going to put in product is we're going to do that in reverse, right? So that we'll allow you to execute a REST API to go out and get data from any source and real time bring that into Buddy.
That's great. And James, one more while it's up. This is a little bit of a longer question. It's surrounding on access control. The question reads, how does the buddy ensure while getting the information and maintain the proper access control on what data should be available for which role, and considering proper RBAC or mandatory access control, which might be highly confidential, and then accordingly respond?
So there's multiple levels of protection that we've got, but specifically to that use case, which is asking the question around content. Okay, Pega supports many different authentication means, right? So you guys are already familiar with the Pega authentication. You've got basic, you've got LDAP, you've got the SSO, you've got OAuth. Whichever authentication means you're using, invariably what will happen behind the scenes is there is an operator or there is an access role, right, or an access group that is being used to determine what access that user gets. So for example, if you're using basic authentication, it's fairly simple, right? Because every user who signs in, we just go and check that user, we get the roles associated to that user, and when we make a semantic query to our vector store, we pre-filter that content and say this user only has access to the data determined by the roles that that user has. So a user can never see more content than they're able to see based on our own Pega role-based security. Okay, so that's the same, almost the exact same security we're using in Pega Knowledge. So if you're familiar with Pega Knowledge and the way we actually search and secure our content, we've expanded that and we've made it very, very similar into Buddy as well. So from a question perspective, right, again, if it's a REST API, you still have to authenticate the user. Okay, so you can have complicated OAuth algorithms, right, where you have different operators who are asking different questions, or you can have a very simple public-facing authentication that is allowing all the public content to get out. Okay, but how you set up that security, it's the same Pega security and it's the same Pega roles, right? We just actually get you to use Knowledge Buddy prefix on the roles because we've been a little bit pedantic about which roles we're going to allow access into Buddy, and so they're Knowledge Buddy roles.
As they say, James, as they say, I couldn't have answered that better myself.
Well, hopefully you guys will all be able to answer these questions by the end of this presentation today. So, all right, I still want a few more slides. I want to give you guys, I'm giving you guys a little bit more understanding of the background, right? So that you've got the tools available to be able to answer the questions that your customers are going to ask you when you actually step out and start talking to the customers. So let's have a little bit here. I've got a few slides on behind the scenes, a little bit about the architecture and what happens, right? So remember, from a Buddy perspective, right? Buddy's available as a REST API. Okay, so simply, I mean, you guys know what that means. You can put Buddy anywhere. Okay, it's a REST API. Okay, so you don't have to ask, can I put it onto my website? Can I actually integrate it into WebEx or into Teams? The answer is yes, it's a REST API. Okay, you just create your endpoint, secure it, and basically hook the users in, and you start asking questions. Okay, so the second thing we do give you though is obviously we have a Buddy component, which I showed you in the previous screens I had, which is I mean, it's pretty simple. It's a text box, and you get the answer coming back. So there's not a lot of rocket science in there. So you can either use our UI, right, or of course we have data pages because it's Pega, right? So you can basically just use our data pages and build your own user interface as well if you wanted. Okay. So what happens? We have our Buddy application, right, which you'll always build your own application layer, right? So you need that if you want to be able to create reports or insights, or you want to be able to do certain customizations. You do that through your own Buddy application layer. So we have our Knowledge Buddy, and that sits on Pega Infinity. And of course, we have all the Connect generative AI rules built into it. And it's this Connect generative AI rule where all the magic happens, right? So when Buddy asks a question, we go through this generative AI gateway. Okay, in the background, okay, it's taking advantage, you know, whether you're asking a question or whether you're injecting content into the vector store, it doesn't matter. Like, we handle that all in the background. You just make API calls and we do all the magic in the background. Now, at the moment, as I said, we're using OpenAI. This will very quickly expand. In fact, we're already well into the progress of this work is getting many other generative AI models to work as well. And of course, because everything is REST API, right? You can take any data you can find anywhere. You just have to get that into a text format, which of course, if you guys are already using LangChain, you'll know there's already dozens of libraries out there that allow you to get data from any source. Or of course, use Pega KM, you know, create your content, publish it. You know, there's a couple of configurations you have to do. So you're determining which articles from KM are going into Buddy. That's, you know, it's really just making some decisions. And then you publish the article and we push it across and handle all the indexing for you. So pretty easy. You know, obviously from a deployment perspective, it starts to get a little bit more complicated because we get lots and lots of questions from people. Can we run Knowledge Buddy on-prem? Can we run Knowledge Buddy in the cloud? Do we have to be on Cloud 3? Can we run Knowledge Buddy in version 23 or release 23 or release 8.8? The answer to some of these questions is yes, but of course you need to understand some of the rules. First and foremost rule, Knowledge Buddy is available only on Pega Cloud 3. Okay, so that's our first rule that we have, right, that cannot be broken, right? So Remember though, Knowledge Buddy is just a REST API. Okay, so once you have a license for Pega Cloud, right, and Cloud Free, and you have a Buddy license, you get your vector store, right? You can push your content into Buddy from anywhere through REST APIs, right? And you can start asking questions through REST APIs. Okay. Now, one of the things we have done with the legacy versions like 8.7, 8.8, and 23 is we're allowing the Knowledge Buddy gadget to be pulled back into these early releases. So you still need to have a Buddy on the cloud, right? But you can actually sit in your 8.8 environment and through the REST API, through our gadget, you can actually just ask questions to Buddy and get answers. Okay. So I hope that sort of gives you a bit more on the background there.
And James, a deployment type question is in as you're on that slide. Can Knowledge Buddy be deployed independently of KM, or is there a dependency on having KM deployed as well to use the Buddy?
That's a great question. And you'll note in this slide here, there is no Pega knowledge. So the answer is you don't need Pega knowledge at all, right? So we've deliberately built Knowledge Buddy as a completely separate product with no dependencies on Pega knowledge at all. Okay. Now, if I go back to this previous slide here about your data, okay, if you think about it here, you've got Knowledge Buddy sitting out on the cloud, and you've got here Pega KM. So what we did internally at Pega is we did our own integration from Pega KM, right? So that when you publish an article, we call the REST APIs, what we call the data pages, but we call our own Buddy and we push the data into Buddy. So we have our own implementation. It's pretty simple. And also, by the way, you can get this same Pega knowledge integration to work on earlier versions of Pega KM as well. So you can have an 8.8 Pega KM instance that you already have. You go and license Buddy on the cloud. You download our Buddy gadget, right? That will then allow you to make some tweaks to your KM and publish your articles, right? And push them straight into Buddy. Okay. So there's some pretty cool integrations, but you definitely do not have a dependency on KM. But of course, there's benefits, right? Because if you are using KM today and you upgrade to release 24.1 and you go and license Knowledge Buddy, as I said, there's some little setup that you do to determine which content types and which categories you want to synchronize across. But then you press a button and in the background, we'll take all the published content and we'll go and generate the embeddings, push them across into the vector store. And so everything happens for you automatically. Then you just have to log in, create your Buddy and start asking questions. Okay, so there's no need to go in and do any integration with any other application because if your content's already in Pega knowledge, you just hit the ground running. Right?
That's great. From our audience again, if it's deployed in Pega Cloud 3, does it comply with GDPR or other similar privacy compliances?
Yes. So if you're a European customer in the European cloud, then when any of your questions that come in will always be routed through to a European server. Same with the US. If you're in the US, you'll stay in the US. So within the regions themselves, we've obviously got multiple instances and multiple servers that are available for failover and for rollover, but we would never send a European request across to a US server.
Excellent. And another question, can much older Pega apps in 7.x or 8.1, 8.2, can they use Knowledge Buddy using the REST API?
100% they can. So this is the beauty of a REST API. Right? You just have to go and you set it up in the cloud. So you still have to have your Buddy running in the cloud, right? But because it's a REST API, just ask your question to it, send the question, you'll get the content coming back. Okay. And of course, this is the other beauty about the Pega footprint as a product set to build on top of, is we already fully support integrating REST APIs into the product. It's super easy to use. So yeah, go for it. Create your Buddy in 24.1 and you can use Buddy anywhere. Okay. So let me go on. Just a little bit of background information, and I'm sure some people will know this, but I'm sure some people won't. So I want to just give you a background as to what actually happens. How does Buddy actually even work? And this sort of slide breaks into 4 build outs. It's pretty quick, but let's take a piece of content, right? So you take a knowledge article, you take a web page, it doesn't matter. It has some text on it. You make a call through to the Buddy API to ingest it. Okay, and then you choose, we have a couple of different chunking methods, and we're going to build a whole bunch more chunking methods. So Buddy does all the chunking for you. So what an embedding actually is you take a big knowledge article, might be like, could be many, many pages. In fact, could be 100 pages, could be 1 page, but it's still going to be made up of pieces of text on that page or pages. So we generate chunks, and for each chunk, we use generative AI to create an embedding, right? And then we store those embeddings in our vector store. Okay, so this process happens fully automatically. However, if you guys are advanced and you want to write your own complicated chunking algorithms, right? Because here's the thing, right? You guys are going to know your own data better. And when you're working with customers, you're hands-on, you're looking at their content, you're touching, you're feeling, you're seeing their content. You're more than likely going to be able to say, you know what, I can do this chunking specifically to your content or your repositories. So you can build your own chunking algorithms if you like, and you can ingest content into Buddy actually pre-chunked. So you make your own chunks and you pass that data in. Anyway, in the end, it all ends up in the vector data store. Okay, so what happens then? We get a question comes in, we sort of do the opposite, right? So now we convert the question, right, into an embedding, right? So we're basically converting we're still using the REST API. We're basically converting the question to an embedding. We're going and doing what we call a semantic search, right? Or a similarity search, right? So we're retrieving a whole bunch of chunks from the vector repository. We then bundle all of these chunks up along with the prompt that you've written, right? So as partners, you guys are going to be writing prompts, right? This is where, and you'll know this yourselves already. The toughest gig in generative AI is writing prompts, right? So when you guys master that, the value you add to Buddy is infinite. Okay, so we take all this stuff, we bundle it up in a nice little package, we send it to generative AI, and we say, hey, you're the expert here. We're just giving you the information. Now you answer the question, right? And so, of course, generative AI returns the answer, and it returns it in whatever format we ask for it. Okay, so it's actually a pretty cool process. As I said before, this is a standard RAG process. There'll be many, many tools that do this. So as a Pega partner, right, when you're talking about what Buddy offers everything around it, right? Buddy's the wrapper. Buddy creates the case. Buddy does all the reporting, does all the analytics, right? It does all the auditing. It maintains the history, allows you to get feedback, etc. Right? So think of it as being what you can do with generative AI on Pega steroids. Right. Okay, so just a little bit more sort of technical on the background here from the ingestion API perspective. It is a service that we have, right? So when content comes in, right, we basically push it into, obviously we're checking all the access and things, we're chunking. When it goes into this service here, this actually queues up the documents for processing, right? So for example, if you push the document in that was 1 page, right, it's going to instantly process, right? If you push a document in that's 700 pages, we have to break those 700 pages into individual chunks. We have to generate embeddings for each chunk. And there's other things that we do as well. So this all happens in the vector store, and this can take a little bit of time. So there is a queue. So you do get back a 202 to say it's been accepted, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's being processed. So we do actually have an API here, the ingestion API that allows you to check the status to say, hey, has this Buddy ingestion been completed, or has there been any issues with it? So there is some tracking you can do as well.
James,
Yes.
there's a couple questions that came in. One that is probably answered here, but in Knowledge Buddy, right, we have two APIs. We have the ingestion API, we have the question API. When you say we can call the buddy using the REST API, you're referring to the question API? That is the
Yes.
question that came in.
Yes, the question API. Correct.
Okay. And then the second question, the embeddings are generated by the LLM provider, the large language model, behind the scene. Currently, it is OpenAI. Is that right? Is the question.
That is correct. Yes. OpenAI. So we're currently sticking with OpenAI for 24.1. We are also looking to do this completely in-house with our own embedding models, right? So there's plenty of open source models now that are very competitive with Ada. So we use Ada. We can be equally as competitive to do that, and we can do it in-house without having to go through, through OpenAI's APIs. So
James,
that will change in a future release, probably very soon.
all right. And then in those future releases, or even now, can we support other LLMs?
Yeah, great question too. So at the moment, right now in 24.1, we are only supporting OpenAI, right? But here's the thing, we're not going to make you guys wait until 24.2 to get more cool buddy features, right? So we're going to slowly release our service pack process, right, for buddy, and we're going to keep sneaking more features out into buddy. So what will happen is during our service pack process, we'll open up more language models and we'll make those available. And within buddy, you can literally choose your own language model. So that's a little secret. I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but that's definitely coming.
Sorry to put you on that spot. A couple other quick questions. Is the Pega vector store part of Knowledge Buddy's license?
Yes, and that is the only way to get the vector store, but we don't allow and we don't encourage access to the vector store for any other purposes. So the vector store, it's not like a regular Pega database. It's essentially reserved for the purposes of Knowledge Buddy. Right. But yes, the only way you get the vector store is by purchasing Knowledge Buddy.
All right. Is there a way, and this is coming in from the audience, is there a way to set up two Knowledge Buddies mapped to different documents and run some prompts like what is common or different between both of the documents?
Okay, so that's actually a very interesting use case. I'm just trying to think, because obviously it's if you can do it with generative AI, you can do it with Knowledge Buddy is my simple answer. For that particular use case though, I'm trying to wonder whether well, we don't, so put it this way, the simple answer is we don't have anything out of the box at the moment, right, that will do that comparison for you. However, within the Pega knowledge management product, we are going to look to do, so we currently have a duplicate document check when you create an article, right? We'll be looking to do a similar duplicate document check using the vector store to do article to article comparisons. So we don't have that feature. We haven't built our feature yet. And I think that's really the feature that you're looking for, potentially outside of knowledge management, but we don't have that anywhere. That doesn't mean that someone who's quite clever with the OpenAI can't get that to work. That's a really good question, though.
Okay. And then another question that's coming in is, as we're using the OpenAI LLM, when calling to the question API, is the data going out or being exposed to the public cloud?
Absolutely not. So we have an absolute ironclad 100% signed, sealed, delivered agreement with Microsoft, who is we're using Microsoft OpenAI, provider that they will not share or use any of the data that gets sent to them for any type of training purposes or anything else. Like, it's literally a black box. And we're so confident in this that we're rolling buddies out right through Pega, and we're pushing all our data into it. So we have no concerns at all about the security not being respected, right, and that privacy of the data.
That's great. And then this next question, I think it really relates back to last, but Anupam writes, could be a sales buddy versus a could be a sales buddy versus a service buddy in this example.
Definitely. So here's the thing with buddies, and I want to jump through this quickly because I can actually jump in and show you buddy as well, and I can actually walk through some of these things where it'll make it clearer. But think of it this way: when you ask a question to a buddy, right? It is a generative AI prompt that you give it whatever instructions you want, and then you tell it what data sources that you want to use, right? And we can ingest multiple data sources. You just choose those data sources, right? And then you can ask questions to them, right? So you can input, you can have a HR buddy looking at HR data. You can have a sales buddy looking at sales data. You can have an IT buddy looking at your IT data. However you want to segment your content and however many different buddies you want to have, you can just build them out. We've gone nuts inside Pega. We have a people buddy, we have a sales buddy, we have our self-study buddy, we have an IT, but you name it, we've got buddies for them now. They're just popping up everywhere. And that's the thing is once you start using them and once you work out how to write the prompts and configure them and you start getting the content out, they almost become addictive, right? Because they're so easy to use, right? And it's just the same as generative AI. I'm not saying Pega's generative AI is better because it is just using OpenAI. What I'm saying is the method of being able to deploy it so easily just makes you want to have more buddies.
Right. And then one more question. It looks really more of a comment, and then let's let you get back so we can get to the demonstration. To answer the two knowledge buddy questions, is there a way to build a version 2 of the same buddy pointed to the new data source, then ask both buddies the same question, allowing you then to compare the responses?
Yeah, so we have two features there. We have the ability to copy a buddy, so you can create a second buddy because you can have multiple buddies. You can create a second buddy which you can use internally for testing, and you can ask questions to both of them. In fact, I've done testing where I just run a REST. I use the REST API to ask questions, right? And then I just fire them to both buddies, and then I just go through in the buddy application. I just look at all the results. Okay, super easy to do. So we also offer another variation of that, which is a linked buddy. Now, a linked buddy means I'm going to keep all of the data sources exactly the same, right? And all the different semantic queries and things, but I'm going to change the instructions, right? So again, it allows you to create a separate version of the buddy and you could have 5 different linked buddies if you like, all using the same data sources with 5 different prompts, right? So for example, you might have one of those, which is an agent buddy for your agents, asking questions to the repository, but then you want to have a customer facing buddy, slightly different terminology, or maybe answering in third person. So you create a linked buddy, same data sources underneath, just a slightly different prompt.
Great. James, from the Q&A, can there be a parent-child relationship between the buddies or related buddies?
So in the linked buddy case, it is a parent-child, which means that from a linked buddy perspective, if you go into your parent buddy, if you like to call it that, if you go in there and you change those data sources, then all of the linked buddies will now reflect the new data source changes that you had.
Great. All right, we're running about 16 minutes to go before we start losing people.
Right.
So I don't want to keep getting in the way of your stuff, James. Take it away.
Look, guys, these are great questions, right? And these are questions your customers are going to ask you. So it's good that you guys have the answers. I'm going to move a little bit. We're nearly done here with the slides anyway. So this is just the APIs that we do have. So basically, let's not even talk about this one. Let me just jump here. In fact, this is where can you learn more? Pega Academy has training for Buddy, right? And this is the link here, and we can, in fact, let me just break out of presentation mode. Actually, I'm going to stay in presentation mode, but we'll get that link out to you guys, or just go to Pega Academy and just search for Knowledge Buddy. Within these Knowledge Buddy missions, right, you actually get to spin up your own Knowledge Buddy. You get your own Knowledge Buddy instance that you can configure. You can run REST APIs. You can push the content in. It'll give you the challenges. It gives you the instance, and you can start using Buddy. Okay, so no need to wait. Jump in and go and start using Buddy. Okay, so now we're on to the demo quick side of things. So let me, in fact, I was doing something slightly different before, but I'm just going to come back here. So guys, I'm going to show you, this is our internal demo instance. So I'm just going to sort of whiz through a few things and I'll sort of show you what's going on. This is the development instance, so you might see a few little gremlins here and there. But I'll just sort of try to walk you through it and go through the process of creating buddies. Okay, let me start off with, let me just drag this one across here. Okay, so I'm just going to start. This is just a Constellation application. Okay, I'm going to actually start off with the metrics to show you some of the data that we actually do capture here, and I'll have to see why this slide, this one's not running. But basically, when you've got all your different buddies in the system, right, because everything comes in as a case, right, we just get case-based reporting, okay? And so you can see all the different buddies that we've got in this demo instance, because we've got solution consultants writing all sorts of, you should see the crazy buddies we've got. And of course, you know what? The first thing everybody does is they get their buddy to start responding like a pirate, right? I'm not sure why, but that seems to be a pretty clear consensus. But when you build your buddies out, obviously you want to be able to report on them. So we track every single question that gets asked, and these are just some basic stats. But let's jump straight in here. And what I've got is, I've loaded some data in. So let me sort of show you data sources as well. So for all the different data sources, this is not, I stress, this is not a normal customer environment. I would not expect any customer to have 388 data sources. But because we're doing different tests and we're playing around, you know, we've got a whole bunch of different customer data we've brought in here. We've got our knowledge management content that gets synchronized across. But essentially, a data source, and I'll just go and create a new data source here. I'm going to create a data source. Okay, and I'm going to call this one, and you give it a description. What you get to decide on your data source is this is where the Pega role security starts to come into it, right? So you define for this particular data source that I'm building, Pega Well Partner 1, who is allowed to manage this data source, right? So if I wanted this just to be myself, I can pick a role, and this will mean that I'm the only person who is able to manage this particular data source. Now you would create your roles. We've got solution consultants and various different people. So I'm just going to pick myself for this one as an example. So this would mean that, hey, I'm the only person who can do anything with this data source, which means through REST APIs, right? Only users who have this knowledge buddy James role are going to be able to ingest content into the buddy. Don't have this role, you can't ingest content, you'll get rejected. Likewise, within the buddy application itself, you can see all of these different data sources. If I grant access to Knowledge Buddy Manager, right, which is typically what happens in our test instance here, that means that every Knowledge Buddy Manager gets access to it. If I want to make it more restrictive, again, I might just restrict it to myself. And when we're ingesting our content, because we're calling a REST API and we're pushing things in, we offer a couple of different chunking methods at this point. And we've tried to keep our chunking very simple in MLP1, okay? So we've got two different ones you can pick, either the size chunking or title chunking. They're basically exactly the same, right? A size chunking, as it says, is going to break by 1,000 characters with a 200 character overlap. Okay, so we basically, every one of those different chunks, we generate the embedding and we store it. If I do title, all it's doing is exactly the same chunks, except for every single chunk, we prefix it with the title of the document, right? Which starts to get more of, it makes those embeddings have more of a flavor of the particular article you're asking questions to. So they're the two variations we have. Otherwise, you can say none, and you can basically ingest your own content with your own chunks. Okay, I'll just discard that. We don't need that one. From a buddy perspective, and what I've actually done here is, I actually have ingested a site. So I went to the Visit Vegas website, okay, and so I've basically just ingested some content in, okay, and I put it into this Visit Vegas. So what I've also done is, and I'm actually we'll create a new one. So I'm just going to create a buddy now, right? So this is how hard, guys, it is to create a knowledge buddy. You actually press Create Buddy, you give it a name, partner demo for Vegas data. Okay, now, if you want to copy from a buddy, you can pick an existing buddy in here, right? So if you wanted to pick a different buddy and you had an existing buddy written, just copy it. And I'm not even sure what's in this buddy, but I'll just pick this one. If you want to do a linked buddy, right, which is going to use the same definition of this, but allow you just to change the instructions, you just check that box and it's a linked buddy. Okay, so I'm going to copy this one and we'll make changes to it anyway. And we're going to click Submit. Okay, again, in this particular buddy, we have some default values for access, but we're always securing by roles. So once again, this particular buddy, Pega Well Partner, right, demo, who is allowed to manage the buddy, right? And remember, you don't let everybody into your buddy portal, right? That's the first no-no, because this is an administrator portal, right? But who's going to be allowed to do this? And I'm just going to give this to all the buddy solution consultants, right? I'll say, all right, hey, you guys can all do this. And that would mean that anybody who had this role can come in and edit the buddy. So again, maybe it's better just basically to secure it for myself. Anyway, for this one, I'm going to leave this one as just the managers. Anybody can come in here. So again, who can use the knowledge buddy? This is what users are allowed to actually execute a knowledge buddy and ask questions. Here we just default to public. Again, you can pick whether it's different users, you can have internal users, you can have any type of users you like. Whatever roles you want to create, you create them. And then the last one, which doesn't default in here, is to view the knowledge buddy. Right? I might just say, hey, who can do this? The buddy solution consultants. Okay. And view the buddy means you can't manage the buddy. You can't change the buddy. You can't edit the buddy, but you can still come into this portal and you can still see the buddy. Okay. Now, if you don't have the right access, you don't get to see the data. It's as simple as that. This buddy will be completely invisible to you. Okay. So I'm going to hit submit. I'm going to go to the next stage here. I copied this buddy from another buddy. Okay. So this is the buddy that I got with the text pulled in here. Now we're going to do this. We're making this for our Vegas buddy, so we might want to make a few bits of changes for this. But you can see here, I'm being very clear with generative AI. I'm just giving it the instructions. This is no different to anything that you want to have, except for the fact that I'm starting to refer to context. Right now, when you start to see the rest of the prompt here, you'll see my information. I have context. Okay. Now, the important thing about the context is, again, we're feeding values into the buddy for our RAG data. So here I'm saying the references are value from the context, right? You must use the chunk URL or whatever the rules are. You explicitly say what it is that you want to do, right? And you tell generative AI how to use the context you provide. And because I've already copied this buddy, this is coming here and it's using the search results. It's picking a data source for documentation. I might just stay using that because we've only got a few minutes left. But let's stay using the documentation. This is our release 23 documentation that's in here. But what I can do is I can still customize this a little bit, right? Because I'm now saying, okay, what do we want to have coming back within this buddy? Right? If I wanted a different data source like Vegas, right? I can simply pick Pega World Vegas like that. And why not for fun? It's not going to give us good results. But let's add Pega. In fact, we'll do Pega World Vegas and we can take these other things out. Actually, I like to stick with it out of the box, right? So now I've got response attributes. These can be any attributes that when you've ingested the content, right? You chose what attributes you wanted to bring in along with your text, right? Now, if you're using Pega Knowledge, well, we already push across the categories. We push across the article ID. We push across the article title. We push the language. We push the article type. These things we push across automatically. But when you're building your own buddies, you get to push whatever attributes you like in yourself. Now, this is where we get a little bit more advanced. You don't need to see advanced if you don't want. You can accept the defaults. But what we say here is this must return results. If we don't return results from this semantic query, we're going to immediately fail the buddy and go, no, we don't have answers for that. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Right? There's certain use cases where you still want to have no results come back and you want to send the data, the prompt through the generative AI. So those use cases, you can uncheck that box. Now, the core use case for that would be if I was trying to detect something like processes. Right, and I wanted to detect a Pega process, there might not be a process for this particular question. So I don't want to fail the prompt, right, just because we don't have a process. Okay, so that's what the must results is. The maximum number of chunks, we all talked about chunking before, or I talked about chunking, you guys got to listen. How many chunks of text do you want to have come out of our vector data store? Now in this case, I've got 5. Right? I might say I want to have 10. Right? What's the maximum total size of the chunks? We're chunking at a maximum size of 1,000, right? And so maybe I want to have 10 chunks coming back and it's 10,000, right? If I want to keep my prompt smaller, because remember, the more text you send to generative AI, the slower the generative AI is going to be. The less text you send, right, the faster it's going to be. right? But the less text you send, potentially the less likely you are to answer the question. Now, I'm going to add on here to the similarity score as a attribute. And here you can see that I'm actually saying for my semantic query, what's the minimum similarity score for the matches? And I've got this here set to 76.5, and let's drop this down to 50. Okay, now this is not a good idea to drop it down to 50 because what that means is the results that are coming back, right, are going to be less relevant to the search query we've actually asked, right? And this is, guys, this is where your expertise comes into it, right? So I have to mode, I've only got a couple of minutes left, all right? So let me just submit this quickly, right? And I'm going to basically save this for later, and I'm going to jump straight in here. I'm going to pop open a little sample demo buddy. And again, this was asking a question about our documentation data source. So I can say something like, what are content types in Pega knowledge, something like that, right? So I've asked a question. I basically execute this now. Hopefully it's running, it'll go off. It's executing the RAG query. It's pulling back the data. This is a pretty generic question. And now you can see here that it's answered in the response format that I've given it. I've told it to respond like this, right? So it's detected that the product is Pega knowledge. It's pulled it out. It's got the title. It's got an answer. It's given it to me in Markdown format, and it's given me some references because I've said, hey, give me the references that you use, right, to actually answer the question. Okay. So this is how we can basically, you can make generative AI do anything you like here, right? Use your imagination, be as flexible as you like or be as strict as you like. The only thing you have to worry about is how do you structure the prompts. Now in this one, I want to show you what happens with these search results because I showed you how to define these variables, but what happens in the background, right? I can now go to execution history. I don't need this for the moment. Okay, and I can see the question I just asked. Okay, so now I can click into this question and this is actually a case, right? So here's the link. I could actually send this to someone and say, hey, Randy, check out this case. It's got some guys asked a crazy question, right? And we got some crazy answer, but whatever. So it's a case. Okay, so now here within the prompt, right, I can actually see this is the prompt that we sent to generative AI. Okay, now you'll note too that we also inject in here a little piece of background text which restricts this for copyright infringements. Right, this is a setting in Dev Studio, but based on our agreement with Microsoft, right, we have to put this one in to basically avoid having copyright data in the buddies. If you're specifically working with that, there's ways around that, but this is sort of required from a legal perspective. Okay, now you can see what's happened. Remember that little field I had with the search results? Now check out what's happened, right? The search results has actually been embedded into our buddy, and we can see here, we can see every single chunk of text, right? And we can see the product name. Here's the product name that we actually have. Here's the URL, right, that we have that is going to open this up from Pega Knowledge documentation. And here's the similarity score, okay? So if I was to ask a crazy question, I would get much lower similarity scores. So working with your own data based on your chunk sizes and things, you'll be able to work your prompts and work your similarity scores so that you're getting the right data coming out of Buddy. I probably talked way too much here, and I know we haven't got a lot into the Buddy, but I think you can see here pretty quickly that you guys have a very flexible way to write your own prompts. Everything is tracked as a case. You can basically make any number of buddies you like, and the buddies can do whatever you like. So I know you wanted a minute to come back to a slide. So Randy, let me stop sharing and throw back to yourself. And I'm sure there's possibly questions. I'm more than happy to stay on a bit more if people have got questions, but I know we're at the top of the hour. So I just want to be respectful of time. Oh, I'm not really. I'm giving Randy 1 minute.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, let's do this. Let's if you haven't heard, Pega World, June 9th to 11th is coming up. As a quick clarification, attendance to the Pega Partner Town Hall and Reception. Again, they require pre-registration at pega.com/events/Pega World -partner-town-hall or -partner-town-hall. I've put that into the Q&A or into the online there. But I want to be very clear, developing the next gen of women leaders, the panel and the reception, that's an open invite that does not require any registration early or otherwise. So we look forward to seeing you there. Moving forward with Pega World overlapping into our normal schedule of the second Friday of every week, the next episode of Pega Partner Hour will be on the third week of June as opposed to the second. So we'll see you on June 21st. And with that, I'm Randy Morrison. I thank you for all that you do and for taking part in this edition of the Pega Partner Hour. I'll look forward to seeing you in Vegas. If you see me first, please stop me and say hello. We'll stay online here with James for a few minutes. If you have any questions, there's a couple that we didn't answer that we can get back to you via email. If not, if you need to drop, we look forward to seeing you in Vegas. And until then, sell and be well. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be in Vegas too, guys. So you can come and tap me on the shoulder and you can see Buddy live. So yeah, I can see a couple of questions here, Randy. Tried to do a POC in Pega Labs and couldn't find the marketplace component. We're probably about 2 or 3 days away from getting that marketplace component in there. So yeah, hang on for that one. But also don't forget, right, that you need to have a Pega cloud instance to connect to, right? So partners are being set up. So if you talk to your partner liaison, you know, they can put in the request, and we've already got a number of partners who do have their Buddy instances. So you just have to get that request in, then you can get set up. Okay. Buddy manager or super user. So, okay, so the Labs Instance Academy missions only gives you Buddy Manager and Super User. No, that's if they've restricted that access, then that's what you've got. I'm curious though, what's the desire to get the sysadmin access? If someone will have to answer that back, you only can answer that. All right, so guys, any other questions? There's another one here. I don't really understand it. It's a link that's been pasted in.
Yeah, I looked at it, James. That's just the same question about.
Okay, I think I did answer that question. There was one I did actually answer in the community, but I'll try and have a look at this other.
No, James, let me read that question just so if they're still on, we're not being unfair to anybody. So the Pega support question that was asked specifically to you then on that is, he writes, I believe there was talk of the component not yet being available on Marketplace, which you just said. Can you shed some light on the intricacies of the Pega Labs licensing and how the Marketplace component will tie into those licenses?
That's a very good question. So first and foremost is you do need a Knowledge Buddy. So Knowledge Buddy's a little bit of a different product because of the integration with generative AI. Okay, so you must have a Knowledge Buddy license, or you must have an agreement set up, and you must have the Cloud 3 instance. If you don't have that Cloud 3 instance, then you're not going to be able to use Knowledge Buddy. But what you can do with the component itself that you bring down is that component allows you to configure the knowledge management application, right, so that it will push content across into Buddy. Okay, so that's what that marketplace component will do. It's giving you the ability to push the knowledge content into Buddy, and it's giving you that Constellation or UI kit component that you can put into any application, any Pega application you like. You put the Buddy gadget into it, right? And then you can, obviously once you configure it, you've got your Buddy license, you can then ask questions through the Buddy. But if you don't have the cloud instance, then you don't get to use Buddy just yet.
All right, we got one more question in here in case anything else comes of it. To check on the APIs, and you also mentioned that we need to build our own application layer on top of the default Knowledge Buddy layer. So even for that, we would like to see how things are configured in the Dev Studio.
Okay, now I get that question. So you don't need access to Dev Studio to run the REST APIs. While you can run through Dev Studio, just fire up Postman. Okay, so you just can use any REST API client, and as long as you've got the authentication that the application will give you, you can ask questions. So you can test all the APIs through any REST API application. That's the blocker there. As far as building your own application layer, that's just Pega good practice, right? We have customers who come along sometimes and they turn Knowledge Buddy on, or they turn on Pega Knowledge, and they start to implement the application before creating their own application layer, which means they've got no open rule set. When it comes time to run reports, or they're looking to make some minor tweaks to things, you can't do things, right? So that's the benefit of the application layer. yeah, that's mutually exclusive of Buddy. That's just a Pega practice. What we will do though, and we have this in the latest build is, and this is just a reference for you, there is a very specific way we're encouraging people to build their application layers when you're building on top of Buddy. So make sure you refer to the documentation and you follow that setup in terms of how you run your own application, but you definitely don't need that for the academy training.
Sounds good to me. All right, James, I think we got them all. And to the good, actually better than a handful, a whole bunch of you stayed on a little time extra. Thank you very much for your time in signing in. I appreciate them. And James, couldn't have done it any better, man. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on and helping everybody understand this new technology we have. That's really going to be great for a lot of people.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Randy. Pleasure to be here. If you want me back again sometime, you know where to find me. And by the way, I'll give one shameless plug. We'll run a KM. We run KM town sessions every quarter or so, and so partners are always welcome to come along to that. I usually put a little notice out on LinkedIn to say, hey, this is coming up a KM town session, or you can get information from people like yourself, Randy, or your Pega partner contacts. So if you do want to come to a KM town, make sure you reach out. We'll run one just after Pega World. So we'll give a little bit of a plug at Pega World for that as well. And again, that's nothing more than you get to listen to me yabber on about my stuff, right? So it's a bit of fun, but I do share the roadmap. I do talk about more strategy about where we're heading with both knowledge and Buddy. So it's a good one to look out for.
Sounds great. Go look for James Carstairs on LinkedIn and make sure you send a link with him and follow him.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you all.